going to talk to you about day-to-day healing. But first, a joke. Gandhi walked barefoot everywhere, ate very little, and often fasted, leaving him thin and with very bad breath. Thus, he was also often thought of as super-calloused, fragile mystic plagued with halitosis. All right. Today's talk, day-to-day healing. Now, in this talk, as a metaphor, I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago that as a hobby, I've started to study medicinal herbs. In fact, I signed up for a school and I'm learning online, taking classes. And so I'm going to be using what I'm learning in herb school as a metaphor, but I am not talking about herbs. I'm talking about our lives. I'm only using herbs as the metaphor for what I will be speaking about today. Because I have learned so much around what I already knew around healing and how to consolidate it into my moment-to-moment life in a way that I was kind of doing unconsciously, and now I'm doing way more consciously. And it makes a difference. It occurred to me that everything we do, every action we take, every thought we have is either supporting our healing or it's not. That's what's going on all the time. And so what happens, the way I see it, is that sometimes we ignore our health, our well-being, because a priority pops up for us, like getting something done, or achieving something, or all of a sudden there's just something that's important, and we forget the mindset of, is this in line with our well-being before we take action? Is this in line? Because here's the thing that I've learned also, is if I am taking action that is in line with my well-being, then it's in line with your well-being. That there is a way in which our true health and well-being is universal. And when we actually come from that place of health and well-being, what we are doing is adding health and well-being to the world. So it isn't selfish, and it isn't just for ourselves. What we need to remember is what we're always talking about here, which is what we embody manifests. And what we embody entails an integrity of not just what we say in treatment, but what we or think about, but also what we say and do. That's part of the integrity, is that it's all in line. And when it's all in line, then we are in line with our health and well-being. And if we are in line with our health and well-being, then we are adding that to the world and supporting that in everybody else. Even when it doesn't look that way. Because the most interesting thing about health is sometimes it tastes bad. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes we're sure that this couldn't possibly be good. And yet, on a deeper level, know the truth. One of the examples is phlegm. If we have a cold or a flu or something like that, sometimes if it's in the head and not the chest, there's tons and tons of phlegm just flowing out of us. And the one thing many of us want to do is stop it, because it just feels so uncomfortable. And I don't know about you, but I have filled a bag of tissues, a big shopping bag on the floor of tissues. And it's like, oh my God, enough already. But that is how our natural system gets out what is not good for us to have in. And when we take something like NyQuil or DayQuil or whatever to stop that flow, we're actually stopping the healing flow that is our natural way of being. Now, I thought about how many times I've done that in other areas just because I was so darn uncomfortable. I was on the right track, I was doing the right thing, but things got really hard. And so I did something to alleviate the hard, to feel some relief instead of having a real healing. I was in a sweat lodge once, and I was leaning over the steam as it was being poured, and I was praying and praying, and it was getting so hot and uncomfortable. And I was just kept at it, because the idea is to reach a place where you stop feeling the heat at all. You're so in line with spirit. And I have been there, so I know this place exists, where all of a sudden it's not hot at all anymore. All of a sudden you don't feel it. But instead, in this particular case, I wound up sitting back and getting down and hitting the floor and getting out of the way of the steam. And the water pourer, the shaman who was in there with us, looked at me and said, "You were so close. If you just hung in there a little more longer, you were so close." And I think that happens to us sometimes when things build up in a way that is so uncomfortable. One of the things that I have learned about moving things through me quickly, whenever, and Ash has seen this, that whenever I've had a fever or a cold or whatever, it moves through me way faster, like in a day or two rather than a week, than it does most people. And it's because I don't get in its way. I allow it to move through. I stay in the realm of knowing that what my body knows what it's doing. And so I get out of the way of and allow it to do its work, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. And sometimes it's really uncomfortable. Now, how do we incorporate this on a day-to-day basis? One of the things they said in herb class was the best herb for somebody to take is one that they actually will take. And that led me to think about and that led to something else they said, which was the act of making the tea that you then drink is a healing thing in and of itself. That even before you drink the tea, the fact that you took the time to make it, that self-care time, is healing act in and of itself. And I started thinking about all the ways in which I move forward and do something that is healing for me. Little things. I think one of the things that happen when we get an acute circumstance or diagnosis is we become very impatient to get rid of it instead of fully learn what there is for us, to learn to move through it and have a healthier, thriving life than we might have if we didn't so jump to whatever that thing is that will help us relieve us from this circumstance, relieve us from this diagnosis, relieve us from our lack of money. But there's always something there deeper for us to learn. And that is the simple steps that you can take to move you towards that. And they're different for each of us. I don't think there's any universal steps in all this. I think it's very personal that each of us needs to key in. But that healing, true healing, is not an overnight thing. True healing is how we live our lives. And through the act of making the tea, through the act of writing in your journal, through the act of taking a walk, through the act of doing a spiritual mind treatment, through the act of bringing of recognizing and trusting the process, through the act of bringing forth that which matters most, what you value deepest, beyond whatever the circumstance is. These are the things that slowly but surely turn a life around in ways that we may not have ever even anticipated. There is something so deep going on for each of us. I feel it in myself. You know, one of the things they taught me in herb school is how medicinal some spices are that I used a little bit of, but now I'm using way more of, like oregano. Oregano has, and garlic and ginger, that these simple things have a lot of medicinal value that I was using a little bit of, and now I'm using a lot more of. One of the things, and that's a little step, right? So maybe in your next dish you make, you put in twice the amount of oregano you usually put in, twice the amount of garlic, or a quarter or more, but just increase it a little. Maybe you're not somebody who ever drinks, a healthy tea like chamomile, and then all of a sudden you start making chamomile for yourself. Something simple like that. These are or maybe you're not somebody who takes a lot of walks, and then today you go outside, because walking has tremendous medicinal value, not just in terms of your physical health, but your mental health. Maybe you're someone who treats one time a day, and today you treat twice. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that we bring forward in our consciousness more and more, is this a healing step for me to be doing right now? Or am I just going after achieving something? Am I going after something, am I making something else the priority? Now, that's really hard to do, if you need the money, if you're trying to build something, if you're going to work, it can be really hard to do, to go, is this really healing for me to do? And you got to add the right now, because because it's always about this moment. It's really hard to I don't think there's probably some things that over a lifetime are simply not healthy. Drinking arsenic in large amounts is not healthy for anybody at any time. Or we've learned aluminum can be really, really bad. But aluminum's kind of interesting, because before we knew it was bad, we all thought it was really, really good. And now we know it's really, really bad. And so things change, as we learn more. But that is a perfect example of deepening our consciousness around health. You know, all of us can deepen our relationship to our health, and thus the health of the world. One of the things I am recognizing as I continue to deepen my relationship with my health and well-being is how others' relationships are with it, and what my relation is to the larger picture of it. How willing am I to get out of the way of others' process? How willing am I to be encouraging instead of criticizing? And then putting that to work in the moment. There's so much going on in the world, in our lives, that we can look at from a perception of health and well-being. And through those lenses, we can see what actually is the journey and the road to thriving. Some of the richest people in the world are also the sickest, unhappiest. They are not thriving just because they have money. Some of the top CEOs in the world drop dead of heart attacks, strokes. That is not thriving. It is up to us to find a way to move through life that has a real foundation of health and well being to it, because that leads to thriving. The foundation of all thriving is health and well being. Self care is, I heard a great example about self care the other day in one of my herb classes. The teacher was saying, self care is not going out and getting yourself a cookie and a hot chocolate. Though that is what lots of us do when we are out of sorts. If cookies aren't your thing, maybe it's brownies. Self care is when you realize you're out of sorts, and instead of getting the cookie, you make yourself a really great tasting tea that is also healthy for you. You take a walk, you call a friend and say, I really need support right now, a loved one. You take a bath. There's a myriad of things you can do that actually are healthy, that still feel so good and taste great. One of the more interesting things I've learned in this herb class and this is because I have a background in, when I say a background, is a lot of the healing modalities that I have used in my life in the past have been Chinese. And so acupuncture and Chinese herbs. And anybody who has ever taken Chinese herbs knows that it tastes like mud sludge instead of something that is actually drinkable. And one of the things they talked about in one of the first herb classes is that actually the right herbs for you personally usually taste great to you. Like, I don't like cinnamon. My wife loves cinnamon. And this week, I learned about all the medicinal value in cinnamon. And so they were perfect for what my wife can use to build her health. And so I added cinnamon to the teas I've been making her. And she loves it. And she's already started to see some of the medicinal benefits of having that. Where I know that if I added cinnamon to mine, not only would it taste bad for me, but I wouldn't get the medicinal value that she's getting it out of at all. Look at your life this way. You are attracted to the experiences that actually are good for you. I love to walk. I love walking. It does something for me so deeply and enriching in my bones. And if the weather's right, I can walk all day. It clears my head. I think straight. So many benefits I get out of it. My wife walks because it's good for her. She doesn't actually love it. And and the difference, and that tells you something about what is actually good for you. There's no way that walking all day like I like to do would be good for my wife. I'm the one who loves it. That makes it good for me. So look towards what you love that has, and I promise you there's medicinal value in there. Some things that you might thought of as silly has medicinal value for you to grow your health and well-being. That's what's possible here. So it's in the little things. And the one thing I know more than anything else, there you go. My wife loves dancing, yoga, foam roller, and stretching. Those things are incredibly healthy for her. What you love has medicinal value for you. And if it has, and if you are doing what you love, then you are embodying health and well-being. When you do what you love, you are embodying, you are integrating, you are being in integrity with your health and well-being, which automatically leads to thriving. There's this, oh, let me tell you about, I've talked to you guys before about when I was given 4 days to live and how I didn't die. And one of the things, and one of the ways I didn't die was because I found an acupuncturist and started on these Chinese drugs, Chinese herbs. But it took an entire year to fully clear up all the symptoms that were going on for me. So at first, because I was used to Western medicine, I got very frustrated in how the exact symptoms that were killing me were not clearing up after a month or two of taking these horrendously tasting herbs. But I did notice other things. For instance, I had vertigo that had gone on for over a decade to the point where I could not even get on a swing without getting nauseous and dizzy, and that disappeared. I had these horrendous allergies in the spring where I could, where my eyes would water and the phlegm would start flowing out of my nose and it would just be an horrendous situation. It cleared up. I was no longer allergic to anything. All this happened before I started seeing results in the area I went to acupuncture for in the first place. Why do I bring this up? Because it may be the same in our lives. Once we start acting in a healthy manner, there may be things that need to clear up before the big thing you were hoping to clear up, whatever it is. We're walking a healing walk of life will ultimately clear up everything, and you don't get to pick the order. But if the steps you're taking throughout your day are healing steps, it is inevitable that it will lead to healing. If you are taking way more healing steps than you are taking not healing steps, if you are taking way more healing actions than not taking healing actions, I promise you that your life will lead to a much higher level of health, well-being, and thriving. Because that's the next step after health and well-being, is you actually get to thrive. I experience this all the time. I know you will too. This is an incredible journey, and I am sure that it is the basic journey of why we are here in the first place, to learn our own personal way of being in the world that leads us, that steps us step by step to healing, wholeness, and thriving. This is not a direct route. We can't get there by focusing on this goal we want, this result we want. It's done by asking the question, is this healing for me now? And making sure that those are the kinds of steps you take throughout your day to support yourself and getting the support you need to do it, because you don't have to do it alone. But this is a walk of life. It has become my walk of life, and I encourage you to make it yours. Thank you. I love you. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What I give, I receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am, and so it is.